So grateful to be here and very happy to discuss these incredibly important and hard to talk about topics. He has an incredible backbone and staggering moral fiber. Howie is totally committed, completely ethical, totally admirable. No pressure if you can hear this, but honestly, Howie's a hero to me.
John, you joined us before, and it was a pretty incredible kind of testimony you gave, and you just devoted your life to advocacy for child trafficking, and even 9/11 truth. Maybe you could explain to us, in the last decade, what do you think the most challenging parts of coming alive on some of these issues have been?
Probably the hardest thing, and it continues, is just realizing that pretty much everything that I was told and taught since I was in grade school is probably not true.
Good evening.
Johnny, how are you?
Howie, I missed you.
Missed you too. I was lucky enough, on Thursday, I was stuck by myself, and at about 11:47, Neil called in to me. He sent me a text, and I was like, "Hey, you want to come on the show?" He was like, "Sure, how?" I was like, "Get on Skype," and he had some Skype issues before, so he kind of saved my bacon, because as I was thinking about it, I can talk to somebody for an hour, but I can't talk for an hour. So thank you, Neil, if you're listening.
Thank you, Neil. that was a night. Not only was I not fit for human consumption, but I also lost my phone at the least opportune minute, so I couldn't even have got back to you if I wanted to, which I did, and I felt kind of shitty about crapping out, but I was burning it at both ends.
It's been a rough. I mean, honestly, for me, it's been a rough couple weeks. Starting with July 2nd, getting attacked at a Trump rally, going down for the Seth Rich vigil, and I'm, not happy about the turnout, getting suspended off of Twitter, and I've been real quiet about that. And honestly, I really just want to get back to basically what I do, which is, try and expose the child rape and the child sex trafficking, because I feel like, I feel like I've been away for a few weeks, maybe even a month.
It does feel like that. Yeah,
it really does. It really does. And obviously tonight we'll be able to jump, get back into it, and hopefully the people that are listening will really, even if they're casual listeners to the show or really don't know too much about it, the two cases tonight will really show the depravity of what's going on to these children, and it's beyond heartbreaking. It really is.
Absolutely, and this case is just I was familiarizing myself with the material, and I know you've done a lot of research into Grace's case and the other case that'll be on tonight. But my God, and it's like this continual repeat of the agencies that are charged with protecting our children.
Yeah.
Not just failing. I mean, failing is too easy a word to use. I mean, they're complicit in the rape and murder of our children. And I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah. The first case, Packer, I remember when it came to my attention, it was, I believe it was in January. And I had the local news on a Sunday, like it was Sunday morning. It was like a Sunday noon version of the news. And, it was right when I was starting to get into Pizzagate. And, a story comes across about how a 14-year-old girl was killed in a rape murder fantasy by her adoptive mother and her boyfriend. And I was like, what? A rape murder fantasy by adoptive mother and a boyfriend, and and I just felt like it had happened right outside of Philadelphia, and I don't exactly remember how I got into it, but I got onto Facebook, I found some groups, and I joined in. That alone would be just horrific, but then when you start peeling back the layers of the story, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I wanted to, July 9th was the 1-year anniversary of Grace's, of her murder. And, we were tied up with Seth Rich stuff, but I really, I always wanted to, bring this to light. And I tried to get it going on Twitter a bunch of times, and some people, picked it up a little bit. I had tried to have Grace Packer, hashtags, and for some reason it didn't pick up. So, we can talk about it a little bit tonight. And, I'm not as well versed in it. It's, it's been a while, so I'm gonna be fumbling around a little bit, and I want to do it as much justice as possible, and I want it to make as much sense as possible, because it's really, really complicated.
Yeah.
I guess.
And what I'll do to hopefully assist with that, I'm going to tweet out the links so people can kind of follow along and have some information. The links are normally, and still a shout out to Jewel. She's as far as I know still not back with us, and she's sorely missed. But because we usually put these links in our show notes, but I'm just going to tweet them out so people can follow along.
Okay. Let's see. I mean, if I can get to the first one, we can just go through a timeline of Grace's life. And well, how do you want me to do it? You want me to tell you what the link is, or?
No, I'll tweet them. I got them. I'm just going to tweet them out, and you do what you do.
Do what I do. All right.
Okay.
It's funny because I went to. I don't know why I'm saying it's funny, because there's nothing fucking funny about this at all. So it's a poor choice of words. We went to. They had women from the area put together a memorial service for Grace, and her birth mother showed up, and so her, she was given the name Grace by the adoptive mother, but she was actually born Susan. And, I wasn't sure how I felt, personally. I didn't know how I felt about the whole thing, because, Grace was like a perfect name for her, but just the fact that the adopted parents gave her that name, it just didn't sit well. And, it was interesting. I saw, I got to meet some people, and I was able to stay friends with some people, but we just didn't have. There's so much more that needs to be done with this case. And I was telling you earlier on the pre-show that they just want to keep the focus on the fact that this woman and her boyfriend did this horrible thing, plotted this rape, murder, fantasy, and killed this child. And like, they just want to keep it there. But, like I said, there's so much more to it. So, it's called mcall.com. What is it? It's the morning call out of Allentown, and they put together a timeline. So I just wanted to start off with a timeline. Grace Packer was born in 2001. Now, the adoptive mother, Sarah Packer, starts working for Northampton County's Children, Youth, and Families Division. So the adoptive mother worked in social services, and she started in 2003. So Grace was born in 2001, the adoptive mother, and she was married at the time to a man named David Packer, and we'll get to him later. And so she started there in 2003. 2004, Grace goes into foster care with her younger brother and her older sister. And they were given to, from what I understood, was a loving couple who really wanted to adopt them. But for some reason, they had problems and they couldn't get it done. So, I mean, I was talking with some people that were close to it. So Grace, her older sister, and her younger brother were with a good family, and it didn't seem like the social services was too happy, and they were trying to adopt the three of them, but it didn't work out. So that was in 2004. Later on,
seems to be a pattern too.
Right. So you have this good family, and that's not what social services want. Now later in 2004, the adoptive mother, Sarah Packer, and her then husband, David, become foster parents to Grace, her younger brother. I can't remember his name now, and the older sister, Mary Beth. In 2005, the Packers began the adoption process. 2006, the birth parents lost their rights, and in 2007, proves Sarah and David Packer officially adopted. Adoption of Susan and her brother, Grace and her younger brother. I'll kind of stop right here. One of the first things that stood out in this case, after Grace was murdered, there's a younger brother and there's an older sister involved. So my first question was, where are they? Now, and the papers had reported that the younger brother was safe with family. And we didn't exactly know whose family, and they were completely tight-lipped on this. But if it was part of the Packers family, whether it was Sarah or David's, I'm like, well, wait a second. I mean, to me, they had no rights whatsoever. And, they just gave the younger brother. Now, the older sister, still to this day, nobody knows where she is. And, they put it together a memorial service, and she was nowhere to be seen. And if Grace would have been 15, the older sister, Mary Beth, would have been over 18 at that point. And it was strange to me that nobody had heard a word from her. And I made a lot of phone calls about the older sister, and
is she even still alive?
Well, that was
another victim.
That was my first thing, and we'll get to the adoptive father too. So they get adopted. The younger brother says the younger brother and Grace were adopted in 2007. Doesn't say anything about the older sister. Later in 2007, Sarah is promoted at the Northampton County's Children, Youth, and Family Division. So not only was she working in youth services, she gets a promotion in 2007 after 4 years. I can throw this in and we'll get back. In this time, they also had 30 other foster children throughout the home. Okay? 30.
The Packer household.
The Packer household, yes, with Sarah and her husband. This is still Sarah and her husband. This has nothing. The husband did not murder Grace. That was a boyfriend. we'll get to why in a second, why they got divorced. So even though, Grace and the younger brother were adopted, now there's 30 other children in, I think it was like 7 years coming in and out of this home. 2009, the Packers become subsidized permanent legal custodian for another child among the 30 foster children they had over the course of 10 years. So it was actually over 10 years. They had 30 foster children.
And getting paid for all this, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But how do you have, I was trying to think too, this didn't come out a little bit till later, but I was trying to think, like, Sarah is working, the adopted mother is working full time. How does a full time mother raise 30 foster children? Plus her adopted children. I mean, it just, but I guess the dad David was at home, and
unfortunately, as it turned out,
right? Yeah, because in 2010, another Pennsylvania county initiated a criminal investigation into the husband, David Packer. And basically what happened was David Packer had molested Grace and also another child in the home. We don't know who that was. And I didn't, when I was first, digging into the case, I think I found out about it in a comment section of an article that was written, and it was like, wait a second, she was molested by the father, and it was like, what?
Her adopted father.
Her adopted father. So
Mr. Mom pedophile who's staying at home with the children that are flooding through that home, apparently like water, and Mom, the social worker, is working full. Jesus, yeah. Right
now, all right. So so Grace at the time was about 9 years old, I believe. I mean, I don't know when he started, but in 2010 she was 9 years old. The older child was 15. David Packer got a sentence of, what was it, 1.5 to 8 years? 1.5 to 8 years.
For raping a 9-year-old.
9-year-old and a 15-year-old. And a 15-year-old. It was like, I think it was like a concurrent thing. And one of the first things I did was I called the judge who sentenced him, or who was involved in the sentencing. I somehow picked it off the thing. Now, I wasn't able to talk to the judge, but I talked to the person. I don't know, her assistant. I don't know, what do you call that, John? The person that works for the judge.
Yeah, they're probably an assistant, or they're legal aid, or
right. And she told me that it was a plea deal by the DA's office, yada yada yada, and so then I was like, okay, fine, not knowing much about it, but somebody then subsequently told me that the judge has discretion in the case to, not to accept that kind of deal. So I don't know where, and he ended up doing, I believe it was between 3 and 4 years. So at the time when all this broke, he was actually out of prison. So he went in like 2000
for raping a child. And I would guess your average rape case, say, of adults, wouldn't the average be much higher?
Oh yeah. And there was two. There was a 15-year-old. Yeah. But the thing that, okay, fine, whatever. But it's like, there's stricter I thought there were stricter guidelines when the child's under, 13, like as you go down in age. So,
yeah. And there are some good things, like in Florida now, and I'm not sure exactly how many other states, but anything that involves a child, I believe 12 or below, you do life, which is perfect, at least.
Yeah. Well, David Packer did 3 or 4.
3. Yeah.
Yeah, 1.5 to 8. Now I remember too. I couldn't dig up the article. I remember they had what the judge said to David at sentencing, and basically she was chastising him, something to the effect like, you were she was trusted in your care, and I believe what stands out in my mind. She said like, you blew it, pal. And I'm like, and I was like, yeah, I was reading. Yeah, I was like, you blew it. What the? So and the whole thing just seems so bizarre. Like she'd be like, you're a child molesting, raping pedophile. Like you're going away for a long time. You don't say like, you blew the trust. So, I mean, I guess I should have dug that up. But that was somewhere in the back of my archives with this. I mean, it was just another sickening thing, just aspect to this whole thing. So,
yeah, and not isolated at all. I mean, when you look at these cases back and back and back, that's more typical that they're treated like a lesser crime than raping an adult. It's like it's bad judgment.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's ridiculous.
So we'll go on with finish off with go through the timeline. So in 2010 they initiated all this. One day after the criminal investigation, Sarah Packer was suspended and then terminated from her job with the Children, Youth, and Families division over allegations of misconduct. Well, she was suspended, and then that was in January, and then in April of 2010, she was terminated. May, as a terminated county employee, Sarah Packer is no longer eligible for a pension. She was refunded the $20,000 she had in it. So on top of everything else, cushy job, she got $20,000 back, for being terminated.
Yeah, don't want to risk her pension, for
right.
facilitating child rape, anything like that.
Yeah. So David Packer was officially charged. So actually, the incident took place in 2006. David Packer was charged in 2010. He was charged again in November. So Grace was that charge was in September. Then the 15-year-old was in November. 2010, Allentown police charged David Packer with the 2006 indecent assault of a child under 13, Grace, and the 2008 indecent assault of a child under 16. And we're still not sure who that is, but I don't know if it was the older sister or it was a different foster child inside of the home. It's never been, that's never been released. So that was in June of 2011. David Packer pleads guilty to indecent assault. Blah blah blah. He is sentenced to 18 months to. He was sentenced to 18 months to 5 years in prison, and required to register as a sex offender. So the initial 1.5 to 5 years. Child under 13, child under 16. So something.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but you would think, you would think that somebody who works for child services and has 30 kids floating through their home in a short period of time, and it's found out that her husband raped 2 of them, you would think they would be investigating her and the whole system at this point, but not the case.
Oh, absolutely. But their solution was to just fire her, do an investigation, and it wasn't until I'll get to there's a reporter in Philadelphia that has been working very hard on this ever since it broke. She's the only one. Her name's Deanna Durante. I'm sure she's not listening tonight, but the state still has been unable to locate all 30 of these children. I believe at the last count, they had found about half of them, and talked to about half of the 30 that had been through the home, and they were all placed by one agency, and we can talk about that agency a little bit later. So after he pled guilty, he goes, the father goes into jail in June of 2011. Later on in the timeline, June to December 3rd of 2013, Grace is placed in a residential treatment where she starts the 7th grade. In 2014, she returns home after finishing, with that. And now I believe in the after 2000, during the investigation, Grace was removed from the home. They found that Sarah had no wrongdoing whatsoever. So 2 children, right? So because Grace was given back to her, great, after Dave, after the father, the husband went to jail, Grace was given back to Sarah, and I guess Sarah said, I had no idea even though she was terminated from her job, and I guess she said she had no idea what was going on. But I was like, to me, that seems very like, not enough was done here. Not enough was done. And, once again, now as I'm like revisiting this, 7 months later, it all seems very normal because this shit goes on all the time. But at the time I was like, what the hell is going on here? This is what, like, I was like, this doesn't happen. It's totally bizarre. None of it makes sense. Wait, so,
And now we find it's the rule instead of the exception to the rule.
Right. I guess that's what I was trying to say. And so in January of 2015, so Grace is now, I believe she's about 14 years old. She's still 13 going on 14. She went to live with family members in North Carolina. That's in January of 2015. And actually with the father's relatives. So I don't know. Still not sure why she
father's relatives in North Carolina.
No, not the biological, the adoptive father, the father that raped her.
Oh, they sent
somebody
her
said,
to the relatives of the rapist.
Right, but actually, some pictures came back. Some of the pictures that we gotten for the memorial, she actually seemed like, I don't know how close and relatives were, but she seemed actually kind of happy down there. Like they there's pictures of her like by rivers and stuff. So I don't like we couldn't get close enough to that story, but we don't know why she was sent to North Carolina. But she was, but I don't believe anything happened down there. Nothing was ever spoken about that. I don't know who the people are. And
it doesn't mean because he's a child rapist that his family are child rapists. So
right. So just judging from the pictures, and everything seemed as copacetic, but still we don't understand why it was never said why she was sent to North Carolina. It's like you're trying to keep this child, and then it's like, all right, here you go. Now you're being shuffled off to to North Carolina. Then that was in January. In November of 2015, she returned to Pennsylvania. Once again, a circumstance changed in North Carolina. They shipped her back up to Pennsylvania, and that's when the murder plot actually started. Sarah had started dating another guy. His name was Jacob Sullivan, and I guess obviously Sarah didn't want her around anymore. She never really wanted her around, and I can speak to that. She was treated very poorly in the home, and there was evidence of that, and it was actually reported, but not the sexual abuse, but just the way she was treated as a young child, having to pick up one of the foster children got interviewed who had only stayed at the Packer home for about 3 months. And they said Grace was young. And he said that they had a small dog in the house, and Grace had to pick, and it would crap in the house. And it was Grace's job, as, maybe a 5-year-old to pick up, it was her job to pick up the poop out of all the people in the house. She was always being yelled at, always being locked away. And so whatever. She was never wanted. Now apparently the younger brother who lived with the Packers, Grace's younger brother, he was in good favor with them. And and then I said the older sister, we don't know about her.
Yeah. So if you think that it's an accident that Packer was a pedophile and then her new boyfriend is a pedophile, you're crazy. Okay. And I know you don't think that, but
fuck no. Like, where do and that's what I was saying. Like, are these people putting out like a vibe? Like, how do you find, like, what are you doing? Like, how do you bring that up in conversation? That could be awkward if they're not. You know what I'm saying? You're like, hey,
absolutely.
It's like, you don't just, unless you're 100% sure. I don't think you'd be like, hey, you're like fucking kids. Like what?
And these, I totally believe these are networks of people, wherever they meet, whether it's chat rooms or however they link up, and these type of offenders are, there's a mechanism,
right?
That
we were trying to figure out, and we believe they work together at some kind of call center. So, it wasn't like she met this guy, on in a chat room or something. So it was like something, they must be putting out some kind of vibe or some type of signal to,
yes.
Get them on
the scumbag vibe. Yeah. And if you look at these, just follow that link and look at these pictures. These people are they, yeah. The mother's got a beard. Is that?
Yes. Yeah. People kept bringing that up. Yes. She has a beard and she just looks right. So she came back. So she comes back in 2015 after being in North Carolina, and immediately they start plotting her murder. And, I guess, so that's November 15. She was, in June of 2016, she officially filed for divorce. And on July 8th of that year, they drove Grace from their home in Abington Township, which is right outside of Philadelphia. I could get to their home and from where I'm at in less than a half an hour. They rented another home a little further out. This was another strange kind of thing, like why they were renting out a second home. It was in a more secluded area. Drove her there specifically to rape and kill her. And we'll get into exactly what happened. So that was on July 8th.
And we talk about, okay, they're planning her murder. You're thinking, well, most people think, well, they didn't like the kid. They wanted to get rid of her. This had nothing to do with this. They're planning a rape murder fantasy of a child.
Oh yeah. Sarah sat there. Sarah sat there and watched the whole thing. We'll get into. It's going to get fairly graphic. What exactly happened? As if her murder wasn't bad enough. They left her after he raped her. They left her in an attic, and it's July in Pennsylvania. It was extremely hot, and they thought she'd be dead. They went up they drove home, and then they came back to find out that she was still alive, and she was wrapped up in a sack
and poisoned this little girl, right? I mean,
they drugged her to help, for the pain, I suppose, because she was, they beat her, then they raped her, and then they tied her up, but they gave her some type of medication to make her, for pain, and they thought she would be dead, leaving her in an attic to die. But then they came back the next day and she wasn't dead, and they Jacob Sullivan squeezed the life out of her. So on July 11th, Sarah reported her missing. Basically said she was a runaway, took some money, and hadn't been seen. In September, so that was in July. 2 months later, the police, they found that the home was vacant and learned that Grace's brother was now enrolled in a different school district, the school district where the house was, where she was murdered. And she was entered in a database. They were trying to, they left the body in the attic the entire time. After they killed her, the body was sitting in the attic, wrapped in kitty litter. And I mean, I don't know what the hell they were thinking, obviously. And but then the police were starting to ask some more questions, and they ended up in October. They dismembered the body and just dumped everything, and just dumped her in the woods. And that was in October. And in November, they found the hunters found her body out in the woods. And then Sarah was charged in November, and December she was released. And then also on December 30th, Sarah and Jacob had attempted suicide at the home of another woman. Her name is Catherine Alban. That's what I'm saying. It's very difficult.
So these fuckers are charged with murder and dismemberment of a child and rape of a child and everything else that they did, and they bond out.
Yeah. They if I could switch over here, they have Jacob Sullivan. Before confessing, he left a suicide note. It says, I guess he had children. He had other children in his life. So he said, Dear babies, I love you all so much. You are the only people that I've always been able to count on. I'm sorry that I'm taking the coward's way out, but I don't have any strength left in me. People want to judge and lie and break me down. They have. I can't exist with Sarah in jail and those fucking lying pigs and the whore media who have made it impossible for us to live. They don't care how many lives or laws they break. I know you will always know that we had nothing to do with this, and no matter what lies they tell, I'm sorry to leave you. Remember all I've taught you. Be brave, stand tall, and do your best to be stronger than I was. I love you, Daddy. That's a suicide note. And when you listen to his confession, the total sociopathic, and to leave a note like that, knowing that you did this stuff. I mean, he confessed to the entire thing, but that was a suicide note, John. So. Yeah, can you comment? I got to take like a half a break here, so I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and we're probably, and what we've been doing and what we'll continue to do is we'll be doing this both tonight and Thursday night, because I know you've got that other case, and we're just barely getting through this one, and that most of these things, I mean, an hour is just not enough. The Grace Packer and the other case we'll be continuing to do. But my God,
I'm hoping yeah, I'm hoping this is all making sense, and it's.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean,
there's two parts to it. I mean this case is just it has hit me for months. I mean, like I said, the initial story, but then it's extremely emotional for me. And
how
being so close to Philadelphia.
How in the fuck, the people get drug charges and they get no bond. They get vehicular manslaughter charges and they get no bond. They get rape of an adult, they get no bond. And in my mind, the judicial system in this case, and obviously, if the first guy who rapes 2 kids gets, maybe 5 years if he's lucky, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, these judges are obviously compromised, and to let these scumbags bond out of jail so they could take the easy way out, which they're even too cowardly to do. You're going to kill yourself. Put a gun to your head. That'll get it done. I mean, there's such cowards that he couldn't even get that right. And then giving them the opportunity to do that. How they've got a dismembered child that was murdered in a sex fantasy, left in an attic, then taken out of there and dismembered and thrown to the wind. What judge allows this to happen? What judicial system? Ours. But I would put forth that these judges must be compromised in some way, and we know from other research that we've done and cases that especially I'm looking forward to in the future. Lori Handrahan is at least going to do an interview with us, and that's one of her areas of expertise is the judicial system and how they're compromised and how they facilitate the abuse and the rape of children. And I mean, this should be so disturbing that you can barely talk about it. I mean, that's the normal reaction to this, and as we're seeing it's not isolated. It's case after case. It's child protective service after child protective service, and we were talking about this earlier. If you think this just happened in this county in Pennsylvania, you're crazy. This is happening in every county. It's happening in every state. And Child Protective Services has become a tool for child traffickers and child rapists and child murderers. So,
yeah. I mean, my reaction. I mean, right now it's kind of like when I was doing this online. I mean, I was, I'm generally more pissed off about, and just irate about the entire thing. I don't know. Tonight I'm just feeling a little, when you just read over the stuff, it's just very difficult. Now, there were apparently Sarah and Jacob. I don't know exactly when, but they got involved in a. We talked about this woman, Catherine Albright. They were involved in a 3-way relationship.
Oh my God! Yeah. Ugh.
And the entire time I'm saying, because Grace was murdered in July and she wasn't found until November, so these 4 months. And I'm thinking the whole time that this Catherine had to know what happened if she was involved in a relationship. Now, Sarah and Jacob, tried suicide at the third person, this Catherine's Albright's house, and Catherine was the one who called 911. Here's her a little bit of the 911 call. Let me start. Albright advised the dispatcher she had just come home and found him barely conscious and non-responsive in the bedroom. She further advised that she believed that he had taken an overdose of pills. When asked by the dispatcher if she knows of any reason why he would do this, she responded, there's a lot of reasons why he would do this. I don't know if you've watched the news lately. are someone we were involved with was recently, it's a big mess. It's a big mess. I don't really know how to explain it, but oh my God. So just based on her 911 call, she had to know. She had to know for months. So even if she wasn't there, it seems to me like major obstruction of justice to me.
And accessory before and after the fact.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I mean, I don't know the time frame when they got into this relationship. And she also was involved in social work, not with children. She dealt with AIDS patient, HIV awareness or something. And
an advocate and please, people listening, go to that link and read this entire story and look at these people. Look what was on this woman's Facebook page. She's passing herself off as an advocate, for children. But look at the rest of it. I mean, it's like what,
Yeah.
It's like a sex ad, on Facebook.
One of the first things I did for Catherine Albright, I mean, I got her LinkedIn, went to her LinkedIn, and I know she used to work for the Girl Scouts.
God.
As I was in the process, and I regret that I didn't. Her LinkedIn went down real quick. Her LinkedIn before I could capture everything.
Yeah, and the Facebook page is also long gone.
So Jake,
but she's not. She's still at large.
She's still large, and nobody, and I don't know. More attention needs to be. I don't know what they're doing with it, but it seems like they're just trying to concentrate on these two. Don't ask me why.
And that's another just thing that needs to be stopped, and that's pattern after pattern. And I could just directly go back to Adrian. The kid's murdered. Okay, we've got the parents, we've got them, we're prosecuting them now. But we find out that the mother was selling videos of the abuse online. Where are those people? These agencies are not doing proper investigations, and they don't want to know.
Yeah,
who else is involved?
Somebody in the know had mentioned that had explained to me the big money that there is in snuff films, and I just thought to myself that there's a good chance that this whole thing was videotaped and passed out, and just entered my mind. So I want to read. So Jacob Sullivan attempts suicide. Doesn't make it, and basically gives a hospital confession. And I want to read what he told the investigators. He confessed everything after writing that that suicide note saying that everybody's just out to get him. So here we go. Jacob Sullivan was subsequently interviewed by investigators. He admitted that he and Sarah Packer plotted the murder of Grace Packer. He indicated that they began planning the murder after Grace's return from residing with a family member in North Carolina in the fall of 2015. He explained that on July 8th, 2016, in the morning hours, he and Sarah drove Grace Packer from Abington Township to the new residence in Quakertown, Richland, and Bucks County. Grace was in her pajamas and during the ride fell asleep in the back of Jacob Sullivan's vehicle. When they arrived at the Quakertown residence, they walked Grace into the home where Jacob Sullivan struck Grace in the face several times, splitting her lip. Following the physical assault, Jacob Sullivan and Sarah Packer took Grace up to the third floor attic of the residence. He admitted that they discussed him raping Grace before killing her. In the third floor finished attic, Jacob Sullivan ripped Grace's pajama top and bit her breast while Sarah Packer watched. Jacob Sullivan admitted that Sarah Packer was sexually aroused witnessing him do this. Jacob Sullivan admitted that he took a Viagra pill prior to attacking Grace in preparation of the rape. Jacob admitted that he performed
Oral sex on Grace, specifically describing his tongue penetrating her vagina. He admitted that he forcibly inserted his semi-erect penis into Grace's vagina. He admitted that he prematurely ejaculated while raping Grace. Grace was conscious during the sexual attack. It is noted that this was not the first time that Jacob Sullivan sexually assaulted Grace. He admitted that on 2 prior occasions in the days leading up to the murder, he had sexual contact with Grace. Specifically, he described oral sex with Grace as well as indecently assaulting, fondling her. Sullivan indicated that Sarah Packer left to get medicine in order to sedate Grace. Upon her return, they gave Grace the medicine. They told Grace it would help minimize the pain she suffered from the physical assault. She took several pills that were given. However, she vomited shortly after. They gave her additional pills. Following this, she was bound and gagged, left to die in a cedar closet in the 3rd floor attic. Sullivan described the attic as extremely hot. They left the residence, returned to their Abington home. Approximately 3 a.m., both of them returned to the residence where they expected to find Grace dead from the effects of the assault, drugging, and excessive heat. They found that she was still conscious and alive. In response to Grace still being alive, Sullivan got down on the floor behind her, wrapped his arm around her neck and face, and slowly squeezed the life out of her. He explained it was more physical and took longer than expected. He then said he concealed the body in the 3rd floor unused attic. They packed her body in kitty litter to mask the odor. She remained concealed in this location until October of 2016. That's 2 months, when police did a follow-up investigation at the residence regarding Grace's disappearance. He explained that following the police visit, they were concerned that they would discover Grace's remains, so they moved the body down to the 2nd floor bathroom where they dismembered her limbs in a tub with a saw purchased by Sarah. They subsequently stored the dismembered remains in 2 separate plastic totes that were placed in Jacob Sullivan's trunk. They subsequently drove north as Sarah provided directions. They intentionally avoided the turnpike, taking only back roads. They did not have a specific location in mind, but pulled over when they saw a clearing on the remote road. They quickly disposed of Grace's remains. Following the dumping of Grace's remains over the course of the next several weeks, they intentionally discarded evidence of the murder in various locations to avoid detection. That was his confession in the hospital.
Yeah. And people need to know this is what you're dealing with. Okay, you've got your normal murder that takes place. What's the motive? Okay, it's rage, jealousy, money. These things are so inhuman that they're plotting the murder of a human being. Not even for the standard motives. They're planning this murder for sexual gratification. And I mean, what does that say about our society? What does it say about a legal system that would allow somebody like this to bond out? And what does it say about us that aren't marching in the street with torches, to have these people identified and have and in my mind, the officials of protective services are just as bad as they are. They have no regard for children or human life or any type of life. And people are, not. Where is the outrage? Where is it?
That's the thing. I mean, this story was, especially all over Philadelphia. It was a pretty big story, and I thought, and I try, I personally, thought that if we can get this going on, on social media a little bit more, really pick up and be like, here's a case. It has the social service element. It has judges. It has DAs. Different, men that raped her, women, third parties. So many, every element to this. and
throw her away like so much garbage. Howie, have they been? Has this been adjudicated yet? The case against these two?
It's going to trial in, I believe, March. So and that was another thing. It was taking a year for this case to come to trial. I said, well, why a year? I mean, basically what I read. I mean, even though it's complicated with the backstory, I mean, the guy confessed. He gave a confession, but it'll take a year to get this to trial. And in my mind, they want it out. They want people to forget about it, and then it'll come back and it'll just go along kind of smoothly, and just end up.
And a death penalty case, if I ever heard one. I mean,
oh yeah, it's definitely, but that's a no-brainer. It's like, what about all the social services that could have protected this child? I mean, remember, going back, I mean, that Grace, her younger brother and older sister were placed with this couple that wanted to adopt her. And if they had just done that, none of this would have happened. None of this ever would have happened. But no, for whatever reason, they wanted Sarah and David Packer to have those children. She gets raped by the father, then he goes to prison. She brings another, and until she was raped and murdered. But it's another one of these falling through the cracks. People, slipped through the cracks, didn't do their job. Bullshit. There's complicity there in my mind.
And okay, in Texas, for example, you drive somebody to a 7-Eleven and they shoot somebody. Guess what? You get charged with first-degree murder. And in my mind, and it's time to change these laws, a caseworker that places this girl time after time with serial child rapists and now murderers should be sitting in that courtroom right along with them.
Yeah.
And until that happens, or until we show up en masse and tear down the building, this will continue.
So I think we have just a few more minutes. I don't want to start too much more. It's just
yeah. And I know there's a lot more about this case you want to talk about. We will be covering that Thursday, and just
yeah. And then if anybody wants to, somebody had mentioned the Victoria Martin's case to me. That will be, because it's similar in nature. A 10-year-old girl was raped and murdered. The mother was putting out ads, basically, for men to come and rape her daughter. Took place in New Mexico. And I don't know what's going. When these are the stories that do not make the national headlines. They don't want people knowing that this stuff is going on, and it's right in front of our faces. I mean, these are not isolated incidences. I mean, this story is horrific so many ways, but there are so many of these horrific stories, and why you don't?
Howie, thank you. It's good to be back. Be with you on Thursday.
JJ Inc. from Against the Wall, and you're listening to UCY.TV.